The next topic that we learned for this unit was dividing complex numbers. So in this case, we are dividing complex numbers, and what this means is you have numbers in the denominator with a variable. So this is what it looks like when you are dividing with a complex number. So I went ahead and wrote the rule up here, and you can pause the video to make sure that you have this rule down. And it says, when dividing with complex numbers in the denominator, multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate of the numerator. And the goal is to eliminate all of the i's in the denominator. So in this case, this is my first example. I have 3 minus 4i in my denominator. Now, you always want your real number first and your imaginary number second. Now, the conjugate is keeping the real number the same and then changing the sign in between the real number and the imaginary number. So, instead of 3 minus 4i, it's 3 times 4i. I mean 3 plus 4i. And I'm going to multiply both the denominator and the numerator by this quantity. And the reason I have to multiply it by both is because this ends up simplifying to 1. So I am going to have to now FOIL or distribute both to both the numerator and the denominator. So we have to go ahead and do that. And that's going to end up being negative 24. And then minus 32i, and then plus 12i, and then plus 16i squared. And then when I distribute to the denominator, I have 9 plus 12i minus 12i minus 16i squared. So this is what it looks like so far. And notice on the denominator, the middle terms cancel out. In this case, now I just simplify, and you know that I squared is going to be negative 1. So we can go ahead and put that up there. So I'm going to have a negative 24, and then I'm going to combine negative 32i and 12i, so that's negative 20i. And then 16 times negative 1 is negative 16. Then looking at the denominator, I have 9, and then I have negative 16 times negative 1, which is positive 16. Then I just combine like terms, minus 20i, and then in the denominator, it's going to be 25. And this is where it gets a little tricky, and you need to simplify. And what I can see from both the numerator and the denominator is they both have a common factor of 5, so I'm going to factor out of 5. So I'm going to be left with negative 8 minus 4i, and 5 times 5. And so whenever I simplify, I'm going to have negative 8 minus 4i, and then divided by 5. So, and that would be your final answer. And notice it takes a good bit of paper, but it's okay. You can handle that. Now, there is another kind, and we have negative 2 plus 6i divided by 10i. And in this case, we again do not want a negative in the denominator. And notice it doesn't have a real part in the denominator. We don't want an I in the denominator. So you can do it two different ways. You can be able to identify the fact that all I need in the denominator is an I squared, because I squared is equal to negative 1. So in that case, to make this 10i squared, I'm just going to multiply that by I, and then I'm going to multiply the numerator by I also. So in this case, I would have negative 2i plus 6i squared divided by 10i squared. And in this case, I can substitute in negative 1 for I squared. So I have negative 2i minus 6, and then negative 10. So we can simplify this from here, and I'm going to do this a different way because you can do it either way. I'm going to distribute the negative 10 to each of the terms up here. So I have negative 2i, and the denominator of negative 2i is negative 10i, and then I have negative 6, negative 10, negative 6, negative tenths. So I notice that I have both a negative sign in the numerator and the denominator, and I can simplify. So I can, that would simplify to I, and this would simplify to I/5. So because they both have 2's in the denominator, and it becomes positive because there's 2 negatives. In this case, there's again 2 negatives, so it's going to be a positive, and then I can factor out a 2 again, so that would be 3/5 to simplify. 6/10 to 3/5. And this is your final answer, and it can also be written as I plus 3 divided by 5. Either way is fine. So hopefully this helps you with dividing conjugates.